Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Thanks for watching. Hey, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We are on all of them, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, whatever. Stitcher's another one. Please make sure that you subscribe to your favorite podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Don't forget, please, to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We are on all of them, whether it's Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Stitcher is another one. Also, Buzzsprout. You can get our website on Buzzsprout for the podcast, and it has all of our shows and programs on it, buzzsprout.com, and look up The Right Side with Doug Billings. And if you want to watch all of the glory of this magnificent podcast, and I'm sure you want to watch it, please go over to YouTube and search Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings. Subscribe to the channel, like the videos, make a few comments, keep them nice, keep them professional, ladies and gentlemen. And we thank you in advance for doing all of that. So today I'd like to begin by telling you a story about a friend of mine from years past who is now, a friend on a certain social media platform. For the sake of protecting his identity, I'm just going to call him Ed Southerton. So Ed is a member of the New Democratic Socialist Party, although he may not realize it, or he may not be ashamed to admit it because he's not really that with it to know whether or not he is, but he is. He's been bought and sold by the New Democratic Socialist Party and all of their mantras. So on this certain social media network, I took issue with a professional sports team because they were wearing the Black Lives Matter t-shirt, okay? Well, I didn't think that was appropriate. This particular team has a color of blue and gray and so forth, and I thought, why not wear a blue T-shirt that supports law enforcement? And I made that kind of statement and so forth. Well, Ed Southerton chimes in, apparently trolling me, and he takes issue with this. Now, the backdrop of this for me is that I've researched and I know exactly what Black Lives Matter is. It stands for Marxism, chaos, unapologetic anarchy, and the systematic plundering of cities and assassinations of law enforcement officers. There's simply no denying that. Their own founders are Marxists and have said publicly that they want to transform this country into a Marxist model of government. But all of these things, you can find them. They're listed well within the Black Lives Matter Charter. If you do your digging, and I'm not the first person to say this, but if you go to Black Lives Matter and you trace down where your donation is going, it doesn't go to Black Lives Matter. It goes to a number of groups, all of which are left-wing radical organizations designed to tear down the current American Republic and rebuild it as a Marxist one. So Ed Southerton lambasted me on social media, telling me that, and I'm quoting here, he said, "Doug Billings, you are pathetic for trying to hijack something you apparently do not understand. Quit showing your white privilege." Now, okay, so then in another one, as if Ed didn't get enough out of his system, he, in another post, apparently again enjoying the trolling life and the attempted bullying that this side always does. Never mind the bullying doesn't work. It's not effective, but that's what they do. The party that says they're all inclusive is just fine and dandy as long as you're inclusive of what they believe in. But the minute that you don't agree with them, they become Ed. And they try to bully you, make fun of you, and all for naught, because all they really succeed in doing is demonstrating their own intellectual immaturity. So then in the second post, he says this, and I quote, "White guys that do not understand the movement should really shut up." Okay. Never mind his. Now, did you get that? White guys that do not understand the movement should really shut up. Now, never mind his intellectual immaturity on the overall issue. Okay, that's one thing. It was his grammar that really pissed me off this time. White guys that do not understand the movement should really shut up. That, Ed, you should be ashamed of yourself. White guys who do not understand the movement should really shut up. That's the correct way to say it. Come on, Ed. Ed, all grammar matters, Ed. Ed then went on to reply to many posts that were in support of mine. And then finally, the straw that broke my comical back was he chose to post a Wikipedia definition of Black Lives Matter. Now, come on. You can't make this stuff up. Wikipedia is a platform whereby almost anybody can get on that thing and write their own definition or add to definitions that are already there. It's a topic without, none of their topics, none of their facts are fact-checked. Anybody, like I said, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can get on there and make anything. So he found a suitable definition for Black Lives Matter on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is always the butt of jokes and cynicism in circles of knowledgeable people anyway, precisely because of that. Anybody can get on there and make up their own definitions and post them. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, Ed is not alone. There is a vastness of intellectual maturity in Ed and in many people like him. He has lots of company. Many people believe that Black Lives Matter is a legitimate and peaceful organization. They're blinded by their own racism. They're blinded by their own anger and bullying that they can't even see, or they refuse to admit that they are anarchists and enablers of the chaos put forth by the mob. White privilege, ladies and gentlemen, white privilege is a racist and mythical conjuring of liberalism. It doesn't exist. But the mob perpetuates the lie and the racism that myth represents. And Ed is part of that problem. Now, we don't mention any of this to have any ill intent or to have any other motive other than to be able to help the Ed Southerntons of the world come to their senses and to abandon that intellectual immaturity. Now, we know full well, although we intend to help, our efforts will be mostly in vain because they've already drunk the Kool-Aid. They've already sunk into the low. They're not going to be able to come up because they have a disdain for either me, what I stand for politically, or more precisely and probably more accurately, they just don't like President Trump, and anything that's associated with an anti-Black Lives Matter voice, opinion, philosophy, or conjecture is a reflection of what Trump has already put forth. So therefore, they automatically hate it, and they're so locked in to their intellectual immaturity that they can't see logically any other alternative viewpoint or worldview than their own. It's common. It's deeper than you think, but thankfully, here's the good news. The Ed Southerntons of the world are in the vast minority of our republic, the vast minority, and their opinions and their philosophies will never become mainstream. It's because people like Nancy Pelosi, who has literally said that she wants people to make lists of places that they visit, restaurants, bars, hair salons, churches, synagogues, and anywhere else, so that if they get COVID-19, they can sue all of the places they visited. Not just the places where they think they may have contracted COVID-19, but all of the places that they visited. This is abject and blatant hatred for American businesses and places of worship. Never mind that such lawsuits, if ever filed, would stand no chance at all of surviving. It's the mere hatred that Pelosi must certainly possess in order to be capable of saying such things. I mean, the goal of Pelosi, the New Democratic Socialist Party, and people like Ed Southerton is not to help businesses recover, not to be a friend, not to help you, not to give a logical, rational response to anything that you might say. The goal of these people is to deconstruct the American Republic and along the way scatter the ashes as of many people they can, many innocent people, so that they can have their voice heard. That's what it's about with them. All right. Enough about Ed. Enough about Ed and his intellectual immaturity. Let's move on to somebody else who doesn't even have an intellect, Joe Biden. We should call this segment, I think, From Biden's Basement Bunker. Every day we should have a From Biden's Basement Bunker segment where we can talk about Joe Biden. He's now officially stated that he wants Islam to be taught in all of our public schools. Brilliant. Let me repeat in case you think that our programming was hijacked by the Babylon Bee. Joe Biden wants to teach Islam, wants to have Islam taught in all of our public schools in America. Wow. Hey, Joe, how about we start with teaching Christianity and Judaism? You know, the tenets and the philosophies and the foundations upon which our republic was founded. How about we do as the founding fathers intended us to do, to teach religion, divine providence, and morality in our schools? Oh, yeah, they intended that, Joe. They did. They intended it. And all you have to do is look up early colonial life and early American school curriculums, and you can find it clearly. They wanted, in fact, Benjamin Franklin and others, Thomas Jefferson inserted and gave ideals of the curriculum. For too long, I think that many people have taken Thomas Jefferson's words, for example, of separation of church and state completely out of context. Jefferson wanted prayer and religion to be part of our republic. Why do you think every one of the founding fathers began their speeches and acts of Congress and presidential swearing-ins, inaugurations with a prayer, with an invocation? They want divine providence taught in schools, and every one of them wanted religion and ethics, morality, philosophy taught in our public schools. They wanted it. They wanted those things to be the guiding lights and philosophies of our government. Our republic was not founded on the tenets and the principles of Islam. And those tenets will never be part of the American mainstream. Every time Joe Biden or any other kook New Democratic Socialist Party member makes a statement like this, they nudge the entire country towards the red, towards the Republican Party. There is no way in God's green earth that Joe Biden from his bunker is going to win this election. I still think, although time's wearing out on me here, I predicted it, and I still stand by the prediction, that because Joe Biden came out and admitted that he's undergoing constant cognitive evaluations, that the New Democratic Socialist Party hierarchy made him say that, because they're going to have an intervention with Joe. They're going to say, Joe, come on. Hey, you've had an illustrious career, great statesman, great reputation, but it's time to pass the baton. I still think they may do this. It may be the shocker. You've already seen in the news today. Today is Monday, July 27th. Many delegates of the Bernie Sanders camp are beginning to defect and claim that they are not going to vote for Joe Biden because his platform doesn't include a Medicaid for all, Medicare for all platform. So we will see. Maybe that's just one excuse they're using not to vote for Joe, but I still think the cognitive disability line was made. They made him say it because they want to have an intervention. His dementia is obvious, and I would really be surprised if he is the nominee. He won't last long, but I'll be surprised if they actually make him their nominee for president of the United States. Then all of this turmoil in Portland. You have Portland, you've got Seattle, New York, Chicago, and my beloved Kansas City, now part of the mob. It's all due to one fact. The New Democratic Socialist Party is listening to the most radical wing of their party. They are held hostage by the radical mob. Ironically, the mob is the vast minority of the party. But that doesn't seem to matter to anybody. They have successfully taken over the New Democratic Socialist Party. But they haven't done it on their own. The mob hasn't. They've had help. The mainstream media is culpable in all of this. They've perpetuated the minority mob every night in their newscast. The vast majority is doing the most damage to the city. The vast minority, I should say, is doing the vast majority of the damage to the party and to the country because the media shows it every night on TV. Now, it's a story, for sure. Portland, 58 days of continuous rioting. Are you kidding me? The mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, has absolutely failed his sworn oath to protect and defend his citizenry. And even the mob rejected him, called for his resignation. I mean, making a complete fool of him. Ted Wheeler has made a complete fool of himself, and the mob has made a fool of him as well. Lori Lightfoot, from Chicago, Beetlejuice and Blackface, as I call her, she's so blinded by her own ineptness that she blames Chicago's violence on a failure to respond to COVID-19. Well, Miss Lightfoot, Lori, more people have died in Chicago this year than have died in Afghanistan. This isn't a malpractice of COVID-19 response. This is a malpractice of your political life. Now, we have in Kansas City. I was born and raised in Kansas City. Mayor Quinton Lucas, there was more violence in Kansas City this year than we've seen in decades. I don't align with Mayor Lucas politically, but I happen to think he's probably a pretty nice guy. I really do. I have no personal grudge against the mayor. I'm rooting for him. I hope he can turn the city around. I'd actually like to have a beer with him and talk about these things. Invite him to come on my show. Mayor, you are invited to come on this show anytime for a friendly conversation about Kansas City and about your initiatives to try to curb the violence and the problems that our city faces. He was on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace the other day. I've got two suggestions for the mayor, two genuine, sincere, and I think very nice suggestions. Number one, Mr. Mayor, you've got to embrace Operation Legend. Operation Legend, if you don't know it, Google it. It's an operation named after a little boy named Legend who was shot and killed in an act of violence in Kansas City. And you have to agree and embrace Operation Legend, Mr. Mayor, and allow federal agents to help solve the city's unsolved murders and violent crimes and to help quell the mob. Okay, you just need to do that. Number two, you've got to distance yourself from radical mayors and governors in the new Democratic Socialist Party. In Chris Wallace interview, you seemed, I think, to side with Lori Lightfoot. That's a losing position for you, sir. Kansas City may have been in the hands and continue to be in the hands of Democrats for the past several decades. Okay, I grant you that. I cede that point. But there are far too many common sense Democrats who view people like Lori Lightfoot, Gavin Newsom of California, Ted Wheeler in Portland, Jenny Durkin in Seattle, and other complete kooks as a danger sign. A danger sign. And it moves common sense people away from the new Democratic Socialist Party. Now, why am I giving you this free advice? Because I certainly don't want you to prevail in the elections, and I don't want them to prevail. I think you're a nice guy. I wish the best for you, Mr. Mayor. But there are so many people that, at least in my observation, who are revolting against the mandates put forth by Newsom in California, and the others. But, especially California. Now that I bring it up, I'm reminded that there are, outside of Los Angeles in California, there are a lot of Republican districts in California. And with every kook move and with every kook mandate that Governor Newsom puts forth, he moves everything towards the red, to the Republican Party. And I think the same thing is going to be true in Washington State and Illinois. So, Mayor Lucas, steer your political alignment away from the kooks, please. Because, it's obvious, I think, that by allowing the mob to continue to riot, commit arson, anarchy, chaos, looting, and rioting, and by not speaking up to condemn it, leaders from Mayor Jenny Durkin, Jay Inslee, Gavin Newsom, Lori Lightfoot, Gretchen Whitmer, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, AOC, Ilhan Omar, all of the others, it's clear that their goal is being achieved. That goal is to divorce themselves from the American Republic. How can we look and define that in any other way? They don't speak up against the mob. Clearly, they want the mob to win. The mob wants to divorce itself from the American Republic. Therefore, so must all of those other leaders want to divorce themselves from the American Republic. Evidence of the obvious is sufficient. They've all but said they want to tear down the Republic and rebuild it anyway. So some of them have alluded to this and said it plainly. Some of them are completely out of the closet on this. They don't even attempt to hide it anymore. And again, the media is responsible for much of the chaos, much of the misinformation campaign, from everything from COVID-19 to the mob to anarchy and et cetera, et cetera. But just as much as members of the new Democratic Socialist Party have failed to speak up and condemn the madness, members of the Republican Party have failed to adequately raise concerns as well. I mean, I think that the mob, the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, are evil. They are evil. They're completely un-American. So why are Republicans, at least many of them, seemingly afraid of the mob? I mean, after all, the mob is systematically trying to destroy the fabric of the American way of life. The American system of government and the very American Republic itself is under attack by these groups. Remember the tears in 2016 of all of those snowflakes that we saw when President Trump won the presidency, crying and wailing because they were never raised to win with dignity or to lose with purpose. They were taught that everybody gets a trophy, right? Everybody gets a trophy. Don't worry, you're always a winner, son. Don't worry, little girl, you're always a winner. Well, now, those kinds of things have raised up for us a generation of wussies. And as far as I'm concerned, you can substitute the word P for the W in that word, because that's what we have in this country, thanks to parents who have raised a couple of generations now of children who were taught to believe that everybody gets a trophy. So those tears of snowflakes in 2016 has now turned into what I call the acid rain of anarchy, arson, rioting, looting, murder, rape, pillaging of all of the cities that we see on television every night that are run and managed by members of the new Democratic Socialist Party. It's no wonder the Democrat leaders are not speaking up against it. They want the chaos to continue. These people in the streets, although they're a small minority of the total population, they represent a significant base, an electoral base, for the new Democratic Socialist Party. They want the chaos and the burning to continue because they think it makes President Trump look bad in an election year. It's that simple. Again, evidence of the obvious is sufficient. President Trump is surviving. President Trump has been the best president we've had in decades, if not ever, simply because of his resolve, and the most unreported story about him is his passion and love of America. You may not like the way that he tweets, you may not like the way that he looks, you might not like his personality, but you have nothing substantive to offer as a critic of the president that's worth mentioning as a substantive reason for your dislike. It all has to do with his personality and his style. Nothing substantive. He's surviving. He's winning. The vast majority of people in this country, the vast majority of the people in this country will not put a Trump bumper sticker on their car. They will not put a Trump yard sign in their yard because they're afraid that their car would be vandalized or their front room window hailed upon with a rain of bullets. Because that's what the mob and those on the other side do. That's like what people who are like Ed Southerton would do. Verbally, physically assault and attack anyone who has a difference of opinion from theirs. And yet they claim to be the all-inclusive party. It's a bunch of rubbish. The whole lot of them are immoral, and they're in the vast minority of the whole situation. There's not anybody in the majority, in the vast majority, who doesn't see through it. And in fact, all, if not all, many of the independent thinkers, the independent voters in this country look at the TV every night, the statues being toppled, the cities being burned, pillaged, murder, rape, unhinged violence, and Democratic leaders not doing a thing about it, refusing federal help. They see it, these independent voters and common sense thinkers in America. And they represent the vast majority. And so perhaps that's the good news tonight on which we end, in which we remind you all that you have a pack of blessings on your back, that through life, its tragedies, its challenges, its happiness, its joys, and its triumphs, all of those are gifts, all of them, including the tragedies and the chaos. We look at everything, we receive everything as a gift, and then we see gratitude, right? Right. And grateful people become the happiest people on the planet. And you, my friends, have a pack of blessings on your back. That's the good news. Don't forget it. Cling to it. Help one another and enter into each other's lives to make differences for the better. Don't be Ed. Do not be Ed. Reach out. Offer a hand of help. Offer a hand of encouragement. And be the voice of reason in a time of chaos. Thanks for watching The Right Side with Doug Billings. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless and guide the United States of America. Good night. Hi, everybody. This is Doug Billings from The Right Side. Thanks for watching and listening every day on our podcast. We appreciate it. I want to say a special shout out to a friend of the show. He goes by the name of Commander's Artist, the Commander's Artist. On Twitter, you can find him at TheRealMadDog58, ladies and gentlemen. That's at TheRealMadDog58. His website, www.thecommandersartist.com. www.thecommandersartist.com. He's created the brand new logo that we use in front and in back of every episode of The Right Side with Doug Billings. You can see it, ironically enough, right over my right shoulder here on the back wall here in the studio. The Right Side with Doug Billings. Also, right next to that one, that beautiful portrait of President Trump. Isn't that a beauty? That one's called Behold My Chosen Leader. The artwork is phenomenal. His patriotism is outstanding. The Commander's Artist, a friend of the show. We're going to give him a shout out. You need to follow him. Go to the website, thecommandersartist.com. Check it out. You'll want to order something for yourself today. He's phenomenal, a great friend of the show. Commander's Artist, cheers, and thank you very much for everything you've done for us here on The Right Side. God bless, and God bless America. Thanks, everybody. Good night.